harm is happening and what happens within your family if you're using a substance or becoming dependent on it. What are the different terms that we hear in the context of substance use is relevant to all substances. So, as you can see, this quote, giving up smoking is easy. I've done it hundreds of times. Mark Twain. It is one of the easiest things to do, to give up a substance that you don't really need to survive. But the trick is hanging on to the quitting. The outline of my talk today will be the definitions of the terms which are commonly used. And these days, they're very colloquially used also, but that is incorrect. So, the term that you might use in regular English would have a different meaning in clinical medicine. What are the warning signs in case you do use a substance, smoking or drinking? Most people will say, I'm a social drinker. And most people today are, in terms of your work or hanging out with your friends. It all starts with a drink or a cigarette. But is it harmful or not? And when you should be seeking help, or when is it becoming a problem? And how to quit. A lot of people have trouble remaining quitters. Moving on to the definitions. What is dependence? What is tolerance? And when does it become an addiction? So, dependence is both psychological and physical. It is defined as a permanent state of craving. When you constantly want the substance, there's a preoccupation about using the substance in your mind. You're always thinking about the next time that you can get the substance. There has been proven to be harm to your body when you're using the substance because of that particular substance, and you still continue to use it. That is a state of dependence. And third, most important will be there is a state of withdrawal from that substance if you try to stop using it, which makes the patient go back and use it again. Tolerance is also a clinical term. Colloquially, most people will be aware of it. Basically, you need more of the same substance to achieve the effect that you like about it. It's an adaptive state of the body. Like if one drink would get you sort of tipsy and happy, now you need to drink two or three to achieve the same result. So that means your body is developing tolerance to it, and that is not a good sign. Addiction is a clinical term. When are you addicted to a substance? When you have a state of dependence, when you have a state of tolerance, when you suffer from a withdrawal of the substance when trying to stop it, that is when a patient is addicted to a substance. Craving is again used colloquially. Clinically, it means a strong desire to acquire that substance. It is of different types. In terms of substance abuse, we will restrict ourselves to the relief and the reward type of craving. Basically, you are craving a relief from some symptom. Smoking controls my anxiety. So that is the craving for the relief that is provided by the cigarette. Or I feel uninhibited, I get happy when I drink. That is the reward because of the substance that you are craving, not maybe not the substance per se. When is it substance abuse? When are you using a substance? And when are you in dependence? This is also something very commonly, as I said earlier, I socially use. Using is you can use anything. I take diabetic medication. That is use, that is a necessity. Without it, you will suffer harm. Abuse is when you know there is a harmful effect to the body, but you continue to use it, whether psychological or physical harm. That is abusing a substance, using it without a prescription or using it when there is really no need. When you stop using a substance and you have harm for like a withdrawal state, but then you're fine and your body returns to normal, that means you don't really need the substance to survive. And this is a state of dependence for your body, which is not healthy. What can be several motivations for drug abuse? Very quickly, as you can see on the screen, there are multiple reasons which motivate people to continue to use external aids for anxiety relief, to feel more self-esteem, that I feel uninhibited and I interact better. Simply peer pressure in certain age groups, everybody's doing it, so I feel the need to do it. Or the office break is a cigarette, so I need to go with them, otherwise I miss out on office gossip. Relief of stress, to relax. And I'm starting with these and moving on to increased risks in lockdown. It's the similar reasons, but they're more exaggerated. You used to finish working at 8, sit down by 8:30, have your one drink and get into dinner by 9. Now you're working from home and you're able to sit down at 8 and have two drinks before you have your dinner at 9. And God forbid, if even that routine is broken, then what's stopping you from sitting down at 6 and having 5 drinks and then getting into dinner? Slowly, tolerance and dependence is developing in your body. People have more time on their hands. And as we tend to forget, it is not a holiday. It's not just stay at home and chill. It is a time of anxiety and fear, a stress about the unknown. Plans are not known. What is going to happen next? There is underlying anxiety constantly, and drinking and smoking might relieve it for some people, and other drugs, which we will not go into detail today. Drinking alone may increase intake. You might know someone, or you may be seeing it in yourself or in your family members. The quantity people consume has gone up. And how do you return to normal post lockdown? Life will go back to normal after the lockdown is ended. Will you be able to cut down this quantity back to what your previous level was, or will you continue with this pattern? Have you even thought about it? Will your body be able to go back, or will you suffer consequences? Social use and pathological use. Social use is someone who is drinking within the parameters that the WHO has said is a healthy amount, or something that will not cause harm to the body. 1 to 2 units per day for men and women, like a beer or a glass of wine for women. Daily is not something that is going to harm your body, but anything above and beyond that, or if you're craving the substance, or if you're using it when you've already been told to cut back, is pathological. Moving on quickly into some of the symptoms that we have. Alcohol withdrawal. For someone who is already dependent, there are psychological symptoms and physical symptoms. Of course, everybody knows the hangover. That's about 6 to 8 hours after you've passed out and you wake up with a hangover, the headache, the nausea, uh, the sweating. Then you might have trouble sleeping on the first day without alcohol again. Then 12 to 24 hours into recovery, there is general discomfort, dehydration, a loss of appetite, and hallucinations. Now, this is when we know it's been a pathological level of use and the patient definitely needs help. Is when you have hallucinations without getting your alcohol requirement, tremors without having alcohol, and that the tremors and hallucinations can go into alcoholic psychosis or delirium tremens beyond 3 days, between 72 hours to 90 hours. If someone's having seizures, it's probably alcohol withdrawal related. A lot of mood swings can happen, anger outbursts can happen, low blood sugar can fall precipitously if you're not getting alcohol in within the required time by your body. Similarly, what is the nicotine withdrawal? Similar symptoms you have in nicotine withdrawal. A lot of people will try to quit cold turkey, which is stopping suddenly your use. If you're having 8 cigarettes, the next day you don't even have one. People have complained of irritation, again, mood swings, anger outbursts, not being able to sleep, feeling low, having difficulty concentrating, and not being able to carry on their work, which makes them go back to the cigarette and start having it again. And of course, there is a increased appetite and weight gain, which may last. The hunger and craving will last for 6 months or more. And a lot of people complain of gaining weight when they quit smoking, which is another reason to push them back into reusing it. Symptoms of nicotine withdrawal begin within a few hours, increase over the next 3 to 4 days, and gradually decrease over 1 to 3 weeks. Cravings are strongest in the first week. Craving is a strong desire for the substance lasting between 30 to 90 seconds. If you cross this period, you may be able to further delay the use of your cigarette. It's during this time when you have to be able to say no. And sometimes people experience rapid fire craving. Very quickly, within the minute, you will feel like having a cigarette 2, 3 times. You will distract yourself, but then again, the next minute, you'll feel like doing again. What is the treatment? For both alcohol and nicotine withdrawal, there is psychosocial therapy, which our psychologists might get into if we have time at the end of the talk. Behavior therapy, social support, a lot of reassurance that yes, you can do it. Pharmacological therapy is different for both alcohol and nicotine depending on the level of dependence. You will use antidepressants, benzodiazepines, nicotine replacement, nicotine patches, nicotine chewing gum is available, and second line treatment for both. Now, the last point, treatment of comorbidities is very important because up to 40 to 50% of people who are dependent on a substance have an underlying mental illness. or a condition that you are self-medicating with the use of alcohol or smoking. Anxiety disorders, depressive disorders being the most common. Mood disorders, bipolar disorder, again being the second most common. How do you know if you have a problem or someone you know may have this problem, and when should you ask for help? As I was saying, the warning signs or when to ask for help. This is something called the CAGE questionnaire. Quickly, you can do it on your own or note it down and ask your loved ones or friends whom you think may be having a problem. Has anyone asked you to cut down on your drinking? This is a simple yes or no questionnaire. Have you been annoyed, or has the person been annoyed at others' criticism of your habit? Have you felt guilty about something that happened when you were drinking, or about the habit itself that, maybe I'm drinking too much, I feel bad, but I can't stop? An eye opener. Drinking the first thing in the morning. Your morning doesn't start without having that one drink and then getting on with the day. If more than two answers were yes, then yes, maybe the person or you need to ask for help. Similarly, for nicotine addiction, this is again a yes or no questionnaire. How soon after waking up in the morning do you smoke or use your first cigarette or tobacco? Within 30 minutes, you'll score yourself as a yes or a 1. After 30 minutes, you may score yourself as a 0. Do you find it difficult not to use tobacco where it is forbidden? If you have flown or traveled or gone to restaurants where smoking is not allowed, and you will see some people getting fidgety and they want to go to the smoking room, or they want to get off the flight and immediately start using tobacco because they're feeling that craving. So if it is difficult to control that, you have that craving, then you score yourself a yes, and that is point one, and no for the other one. Now, this is a little more quantifiable way of rating your smoking. How many cigarettes do you smoke in a day? 1 to 15 will be low, on the lower side. 16 to 25 will be a score of 1. 26 or more will be a score of 2. Do you use tobacco even when you are sick? You are sick enough to stay in bed. You are sick enough to take leave from work, but you're still smoking. Score yourself a 1. Then your loved one or the person you care for, or yourself, whichever brand you're smoking, there will be a tar rating on the box. There are low tar cigarettes, medium tar cigarettes, and high tar cigarettes, depending on the quantity of tar in it. Now, depend on that, 8 and below will be 0, 9 to 15 will be 1, 15 or more will be a score of 2. You don't even need to look at the quantity. On the box itself, it does say low tar, medium tar, and high tar. And similarly, in the scoring, this is a simpler cutoff. Instead of going into low, medium, high, and very high dependence, that's more of a clinical rating. If you have scored 5 or above, please ask for help. Or if you ask these questions to someone and you feel they are scoring more than 5, definitely they need to ask for help, because they're going in for a level of dependence which is more difficult to wean off of. Reasons for quitting. Why do people try to quit? Why do we say that you should quit? Or why the family puts pressure on a person that you need to quit your substance use habit? Family and children, most importantly, of course, there is some pressure. A lot of people don't want their children picking up habits which they themselves consider harmful. Your physical health, you've been told by someone, or you've noticed some deficits yourself. Finances, naturally, depending on the quality and the amount of substance being used, it does have financial implications. And psychological well-being. Like I said, if you're self-medicating because of an underlying disorder, then you're just treating the symptoms and not the illness. It will be more difficult to quit, and it is going to cause physical and psychological harm. Because of the use of the substance, there are certain symptoms which come. You suffer from withdrawal, and quitting gives you physical and psychological benefits. Like a smoker, within 24 hours to 48 hours of quitting, your lungs start healing. This has been noted on findings on bronchial biopsies and endoscopies. Very quickly, I don't want to get into this in detail, but what are some of the familial factors, or what the patient's family sees or suffers because of substance use, abuse, and dependence? Lack of positive role model for the young people in the house. A denial of feelings and problems. If you're always drunk, you're not going to be talking about things. The substance becomes the buffer in your relationships. Difficulty in forming and sustaining relationships, loss of self-esteem naturally for the patient also. For the people who live with them, there is a stigma and a helplessness. There's indiscipline at home. Financial aspect I already touched. A lot of people may not face it. Some people may face it, or at least it will be a point of debate in the house. And domestic violence, don't know how many of you have been seeing the news recently, but the incidence has increased in this time of lockdown. How to say no? What do you need to say no to alcohol? A strong decision to stop using naturally. Specific assertiveness skills to say no to yourself, also to say no to whoever's offering you that drink or that cigarette. Practice in refusing alcohol. Medication, naturally for the underlying condition also and for the substance use disorder. Avoiding risky situations and peer pressure. What are the certain responses that we need to use? If someone's requesting you to drink, request them not to force a drink upon you. The subtle requests of, oh, one peg wouldn't be so bad is what they say to you, and you yourself think I can stop after one. But if you hesitate here, you are lost. If you're trying to quit, you take that one cigarette or that one drink, you're on that downward spiral again. Some strategies for tapering alcohol consumption. I'm going to spend some time on this slide because during the lockdown, as we discussed earlier, some people's quantity has already gone up. Now, it may not be a problem right now if you're able to cut back later, but if you're not, how, and you've noticed yourself that my quantity has gone up, or simply because you want to ration your supply and there's no way to get more alcohol right now, these are some strategies to reduce the quantity. Reduce the number of drinks you're having per day. Space out the length of time between each drink. One good trick is to substitute a glass of water or nibu pani in between each of the alcoholic drinks. Mix your drinks. Change from your preferred alcoholic drink to one you don't like. Naturally, you will have less of it. And adhere to a weekly reduction schedule with a stop date, which is basically having a very concrete plan which is manageable and realistic. Some alternate strategies are, very importantly, recognizing the triggers that make you use a substance. I was angry, so I drank. I was anxious, so I smoked. I saw my friends doing it and I wanted to do it. If that's a trigger for you, avoid that situation. Problems that encourage drinking, learn to pace your drink, plan ahead to limit drinking, learn to cope with everyday problems that encourage drinking, and find alternate sources of enjoyment. Again, during the lockdown, we're bored. I've been sitting all day working. Now I don't know what to do. So I'll sit and have a drink, read, put on the TV, exercise, whatever you find joy in, gardening, crafts. Some specific steps. Now, this is not just for the patients, but the caregivers, your loved ones, or your healthcare workers to set an agenda for yourself or your partner or the person you're taking care of. Ask them to think about the positive aspects of using a particular drug and the negative aspects, whether they've noticed it themselves. If you've noticed it, you can tell them. What are your life goals and how big a role does the substance play in it? And like I said, the goals have to be realistic, specific, accessible, and timed. They have to be meaningful goals. You can't be, oh, I can give up anytime I want. I'm smoking 40 cigarettes a day and I will stop tomorrow. That is not realistic because you will have withdrawal symptoms. And if you haven't already got a medication in place or the plan in place to quit, that's not going to happen. Thank you very much. That is it from our end, my end today. There are motivational techniques. There are cognitive behavioral techniques that people can learn to even cut back or stop completely, depending on what you want to do right now, to assess your own motivation and to increase your motivation. And please reach out to us. We're always here to help. Handing back to you, back to you, Ashna ma'am.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Kislay. So Jayashree, do you want to come in and add something here in terms of what you have seen a lot of patients dealing with these things. So
Thanks. So just to maybe just add a couple of points to what Dr. Kislay has mentioned, because we have been seeing a couple of a lot of people have been facing issues, struggling at this particular time. one of the things that Dr. Kisle mentioned is people are using a lot more substance as a coping mechanism right now to deal with stress and anxiety. That's one of the things that it's very important to be mindful of if that's a challenge which you are facing or which you know somebody is dealing with. It's important that they seek help for that. And the other challenge is, of course, people who are using substances on a regular basis. As the stock is depleting, they're becoming more anxious about it, and they're beginning to experience some amount of these withdrawal symptoms that Dr. Kisle was mentioning. But I think if people have questions, maybe we can take a couple of questions from people who've joined in. You can either drop a message on the chat, or you can ask your question, unmute yourself, and then ask your question.
Yeah. Thank you, Jayashree. So I would encourage if anybody wants to speak up, there's one question right now. So somebody's asking, my father is 75, and I think you can see this, Jayashree and Kisle, you can probably see this, right? So maybe both of you can come in and comment on it, from perspective. To lockdowns,
I'm sorry.
limited.
Okay, so maybe I can just read out the concern, Dr. Kisle, and then you can share your thoughts on this. There's a concern that my father is 75 and used to consume 2 grams of tobacco every day orally. Due to lockdown, supply is limited, so he had to taper the dosage. Now, tobacco is not available to him. He's definitely feeling some restlessness and anxiety. Should we use this time to let him quit or arrange for supply? What if the withdrawal symptoms increase?
Given that, sorry.
No, and
go ahead.
Mentioning that he never thought of quitting.
Again, depending on what he wants, it would be definitely a good idea to get him to quit at that age. Procuring oral tobacco in itself has its own different profile of side effects. If you're afraid of withdrawal symptoms, I would recommend getting a prescription for nicotine patches and nicotine gum. Now, if he's used to oral tobacco, वो तंबाकू चबाने की आदत है, तो nicotine gum उनके लिए बहुत suitable होगा with the similar quantities of nicotine, and you can use that to get over the withdrawal and taper it down slowly to get him to quit. If he doesn't want to quit altogether, again, procuring tobacco will be difficult. It's still better to switch to a nicotine gum rather than have the tobacco in your mouth.
Okay. And Jayashree, you want to talk about how the withdrawal symptoms can be dealt with?
So I think one of the biggest challenges right now that he seems to be facing is the restlessness and anxiety. I'm not sure if you're living with your father, but this is something that maybe the family can also get involved in terms of, establishing a routine. There may be times in the day when there's a higher urge to chew, tobacco. Maybe you can look at substituting those activities with other meaningful, enjoyable activities to reduce the anxiety at that time, to use distraction as a means to cope with that at that time. So those are some of the things that you could think of doing right now. Again, as Dr. Kisle mentioned, given his age, it wouldn't be a bad idea to quit right now if it's possible. But again, if there's anxiety about the withdrawal symptoms, definitely look at a prescription for a nicotine patch, and then use that whilst engaging in this process of quitting. And if you're together as a family, this is a great time to provide the support that he may need to push him towards quitting.
Okay. So I have a question. I did not know that you could actually measure the level of alcohol or substance dependence. This was an interesting scale. So is it something anybody can try, like the scales Kisle you talked about?
And that's why I didn't specifically call out on anyone. They have to do it themselves and realize whether they need help or it's okay. But Yes, in terms of coffee, I used it on myself, although that's very clinically inappropriate and not even correlatable. I have a dependence problem with coffee.
Okay, okay, that's interesting.
I
Okay.
think it's important. Sometimes these scales can be used. I don't know if we can maybe show that scale again. It may be something that people, you could ask yourself, or encourage your friends or anyone who's using substances. Of course, when we think of substances, we've laid more emphasis here in terms of alcohol and nicotine. But there are other substances which people are using. This is, the same question would, apply for those. And even something like what Dr. Kisle mentioned is, caffeine. A lot of people are very heavily dependent upon caffeine, and there are withdrawal of caffeine can also lead to some of the symptoms that are quite disruptive. It can cause increased irritability. It can cause, increased anxiety. So even, caffeine withdrawal also has some of these kind of symptoms.
Also, there are different questionnaires for different substances. I've used the two most commonly used substances ka cutoffs. It is important to do it, and like you said, I mean, right now we can't call on anyone, but it might be useful if you could just note it down and disseminate it amongst your friends. अगर आपके दोस्तों में या परिवार वालों को भी आप बताएं and they do it on themselves, it usually helps as the first indicator that you might need help. People have never thought of it also. So these are just some very quickly asked questions. में 4-5 सवाल हैं जो आप जल्दी जल्दी से देख सकते हैं. Let me just put up the nicotine one also. Of course, this will be in the presentation when it goes up finally. Now, these last three questions would be the more important ones, I would say, rather than the first two, which is a simple yes or no. This kind of quantifies the level of the problem you have. And if you are scoring 1 on all these three, even when the cutoff is, less than 5, if you have a yes to any of these three questions, you might want to consider quitting, you might want to consider reaching out for help, or just reading up more and deciding whether it's harmful for you. Definitely, clinically speaking, any kind of smoking is bad for you. A lot of people, Dr. Jashi and I were talking earlier, are shifting to vaping, which kind of not doesn't give you the tar, but still gives you the nicotine. And if you need nicotine on a daily basis to get through your life, to technically put it, you're developing a tolerance to nicotine, and the receptors required to achieve the same level of pleasure or calm or whatever it is that cigarettes do for you keeps increasing. There will be a point when it stops affecting you, and that day you will be in bigger trouble than right now when you're trying to quit. I'm hoping Dr. Jeshi will explain it better.
No, I think that's it's important to remember that we've seen a lot of younger adults take to vaping, or shift from smoking to vaping, because there is this misconception about what Dr. Kisle was mentioning, that it builds this tolerance towards nicotine, and people seem to think that this is a safer option, but there are these harmful effects. So definitely, there's a lot of people who think that if they want to quit cigarettes, then vaping is an option. I don't think you can equate the two. If you want to quit, quitting is different. So vaping is not an alternative to.
It's also not been studied as much for the younger age group and the middle-aged age group from the 20s to the 40s. There have been incidents of pneumonias and flu-like illnesses because of the vaping. With the multiple type of pods that they were coming. I mean, I'm sure everyone right now, no one's speaking up, but if you ask within your family and friends, you'll know one person who's smoking and one person who's vaping.
Very interesting. So, any other questions anybody has? Please feel free to type in. Yeah, Jayashree, yeah, sorry.
So also, if there are questions that you have or concerns you have about, friends or a family member, do feel free to drop an email or WhatsApp on our, our helpline number, and we can address your queries as well. But if there are any questions, you can also type them in on the chat and send it honestly. So we'd be happy to address that.
There's a question on what is the detox time for nicotine in the body?
Depending on the amount of tobacco that was being consumed. So if you're asking about your father, with 2 grams of tobacco, depending on whether the nicotine was 2 to 4 milligram or 8 to 16 milligram, which is usually the quantity that is going on, it will be 1 to 2 weeks, maximum 3 weeks. So if you're able to keep your father off of tobacco for a month, I would say there's a very good chance he will not feel the craving again for it, especially if you're able to explain why you want him to quit using that. Because again, a lot of people who, as you mentioned, have been using oral tobacco have never thought about quitting because they've never been told about the harmful effects of it. It is a very routine social thing that was done and that just continued. I'm guessing he's 75 and he's never suffered any ill effects of it. So he must have never thought isse to kuch nahi hoga. It's like having a hookah in the village or, just a general coffee, 1 coffee a day. But as Dr. Jaishi said, wo bhi addiction ban sakta hai. Anything above and beyond normal routine, which your body doesn't require, which we're becoming dependent on, which we feel we need to use on a daily basis, although your body doesn't require it for survival, is a dependence and substance abuse.
Yeah, so I have a question. I'm asking this on behalf of our staff, who are involved in looking after a lot of elderly, because we find that a lot of the in-home caregivers are quite dependent on, all these pan masalas and chutkis and that stuff. And we are seeing that some of our caregivers, our staff is challenged, when they monitor the homes and all that. Some of the caregivers who are in the house are actually getting increased dependence on these substances, So, any advice or any suggestions for that?
It's always a difficult conversation to start. It's a different thing when a patient comes to you themselves and says, I'm having a problem with this, rather than when you're going into a home and seeing someone with what is maybe a harmful habit. Then to start that conversation ki aap cut back kariye, to fir, then your patient will do better. In this case, I would always fall back on the one slide which we had about the family of the patient. So in this case, although you have 2 patients, the caregiver is going for 1 patient and you have a attender in the house or a caregiver in the house who is another patient of another, substance use disorder. So what is the effect of their habit on the general household, whether it's financial, whether it's psychological, whether it's the relationship you have with the people in your house, and how is the substance affecting it? That might be the first point to start the conversation. Then to personalize it with, what are the harmful effects of whatever it is you're taking, like pan masala, tambaku, gutka. I don't need to tell anyone, sabne kam se kam ek movie to dekhi hogi, and they must have seen poor Mukesh in those ads where oral tobacco, cigarettes, smoking, causes cancer. Now, that is the last end of the spectrum. It's an entire spectrum of diseases, starting with minor lung problems or minor liver diseases, fatty liver, when you're finally going into the last stage of cirrhosis or cancer or lung cancer or oral cancer. So, personalizing it with the problems that may happen because of the substance and then taking the conversation forward from there. But it definitely needs to be addressed. Some people will back off कि वो तो हमारी दिक्कत नहीं है, caregiver कर रहे हैं, my patient is someone different. It is definitely a conversation which needs to happen.
Sure. Okay. So, so I think we have time for one more question. If somebody has anything they would like to ask, or you can send it to me privately also if there is any hesitation, or else you can write to us and we'll be happy to answer. Just to let you know, Samvedna right now is helping senior citizens or anybody with anxiety disorders who needs help. We're offering first 30 minutes of counseling free, and also we are we are providing telemedicine. So Dr. Kisle is available for telemedicine consultation, and then we have other doctors who are attached to us, like neurologists and other general physicians, like Partners FAMFI. They provide doctors at home and teleconsultation. So in case you would like to reach out to us for any of the telemedicine or counseling needs, please don't hesitate and let us know, and we'll be very happy to help you out. Sure, please go ahead. Yeah. Any food substitutes that help in coping with the withdrawal?
Bananas, because they have a high content of serotonin and tryptophan, which is basically the happy hormones of the body. That helps. Any chewing substitutes, if he's used to orally chewing it, which is why I was saying gum, but chewing gum, general chewing gum will also help with the oral craving, just to have something in your mouth. And if you have supplements at home, multivitamin supplements and B12 supplements, that can help with the restlessness. Because a lot of these patients usually have deficiencies, which exaggerates the restlessness you're feeling. And your brain associates it with, मुझे अपना तंबाकू नहीं मिला, इसलिए मुझे restlessness हो रही है. And Dr. Jayashree can tell you about all the psychological withdrawal restlessness. Uska.
I think definitely if you're on, helping your father to quit, it's important to, to first try and see when are the times that he has these cravings. Is it throughout the day? What time does it start? So to really try and identify some of these patterns, and then see where you can introduce certain substances, increase the gap between, the intake of the tobacco. Again, these are things that we are happy to kind of help, you work with. It's really nice to see that you brought this issue up, because people don't usually want to talk about substance use, and particularly chewing tobacco is quite common, but also incredibly harmful. I think the first step towards quitting and managing that is to just become aware of the challenges and the problems that this could cause later on. So that's the first step. Not necessarily, a lot of times the patient may not themselves be aware of that, but as Dr. Kissel was mentioning, that one of the ways to help a person who's using a particular substance understand that better is by helping them see the impact that it's having on the rest of the family. So if, as a son, you're very concerned about this habit, that would be a starting point.
Thank you, Jayashree. Thank you for that. Thank you. So we will be broadcasting this program again next week, and probably on a different channel. But I would encourage all of you to forward this to other people who may actually be needing it. I can understand that this is a topic which is useful across age groups, so it is not necessarily only for senior citizens. A lot of adults right now are challenged with work from home and all the other anxieties related to their work and future. So, and there might be an increased alcohol dependence, we don't know, but it would be good to hear from people and see how they're coping. So, and if there's anything anybody wants to share, otherwise I think I would like to thank Dr. Kisle and Dr. Jayashree for their insights. And
thank you. I was just typing a response because my web is acting up. That's another cause of stress in this lockdown, which pushes most people to substance. If I were a smoker, I would want one right now. So as I was saying, please share the questionnaires at least, even if not the whole talk, because yes, everything is available online. We have an information overload, but coming from a loved one, a friend, someone you know cares for you, it's harder to avoid the conversation and at least facing up to the problem.
Yeah, very true. Yes. Okay, well, thank you everyone. Thanks for tuning in today, and we'll keep you posted on our future programs, and stay in touch. I've already posted our website details, and you can also watch a lot of these webinars on YouTube. So Dr. Kisle's previous webinars are also available, and our chair yoga sessions, which are very useful, which are very good. So Jyoti Nanda is very, very good at what she's doing. She's a gentle chair yoga expert. So thanks everyone. Have a good weekend, and see you soon.
Yes.
And
Good
hope to hear
lockdown.
some
Stay safe, stay
positive
happy,
news
stay at
over
home.
the weekend. Yeah. Yes.
Stay safe and stay happy.
Yes. Stay
Yes.
safe and stay happy. All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye bye. Thank you.